Yes, my name is David Gilson, and I just want to take a few minutes to point out a few features of Esend. Although Esend is a standalone application, if you own SQL, you also own a piece of Esend for free, and there are some features available to you in some of those standard features that you may not be aware of. So I just wanted to take a minute to point out a few of those, realize some of the tools you have available. So here's the standard set of features from the Esend menu, and these are the things that you have available to you for free because you own SQL. I'm just going to point out a couple features in here so that you're aware they're there. First one is number 3, your email default settings. So if we just take a quick look at the screen from that menu option, you see there's a lot of different things you can set up here, and this is by user. A lot of them are simply controlling default values and settings. So if something is not specifically specified in a command string, it'll look here for things like file extension, signature files if you want to send with it. Let's say you're doing FTPing, there's different settings that you can use to control how that FTP is going to operate and log default colors and fonts and things. So you can do a lot of things in here to personalize Esend to work the way you want it for different users. Okay, back to the main menu. The other feature I want to show you here is the first one here, and that's the ESNDMAIL command. Now, what's unique about this command is the ability to attach multiple attachments in a single email. So currently, let's say you have a process where you're creating some type of file and you're sending it to a customer, and then you go and run another report and it creates a spool file and you send it to the customer. So you have all these separate emails and jobs going out there. It's kind of nice if you could simply combine all those attachments in a single email. That's done by utilizing, and that's what this next screen is here, the attached list parameter of the ESNDMAIL command. Now there's two portions to this screen. The top couple lines is where you would specify a PC type file or a stream file, or the bottom section is where you'd specify all the needed pieces to identify a particular spool file. And like I said, you can do multiples of these on the ESNDMAIL command. So let's look at a couple examples. All right, the first command on the screen here is just using a single spool file in the attached list parameter. The second example, just in different colors, I've got 2 different spool files specified in the attached list, and you can have more than 2, you can have quite a few. Another nice feature that this ESNDMAIL command gives you is the ability to take one or more of these attachments and actually embed them in the body of the email. And that's done by utilizing the message parameter. So in here, I've got whatever message I want to put in there. The key thing is at the end here, I have this keyword, the *ATT2, 2 meaning take the second attachment and embed it in the body of my email. So let's look at an example of actually doing this. Look at a script here. This script is actually running 2 reports. First one is a kind of a monthly summary. It's just single line, total dollars, total orders. The second one is a kind of a line by line detail. And then I'm using the ESNDMAIL command to send both of those attachments. You see both of them listed in the attached list, just specifying the various spool file pieces of information. But in the message parameter at the very end here, you notice I've got a *ATT1. I want to take the first attachment, in this case, the summary report, and embed it in the body of the email. So let's take a look at what that would look like. Here's the actual email. I've got both the attachments at the top, but down on the body, that's the results of the host report, just giving me summary information, total orders, total dollars. So it's a nice way to not only let you do a single process, but also to make the email look good with some of the information. Some of the other things you could put in the body is maybe you have a JPEG file with a logo, and you get to put a logo in the body email too, and really make things look nice. Okay, back to Esend. So those first couple things we look at are things that are part of the standard features, the things you get for free with SQL. But there are some other features if you own the full enhanced Esend. Maybe you own it and don't know that these things are there, or maybe you don't own it and didn't realize that there's some other features that you might find very powerful here. So I'm going to show you a couple of them. The first one is the work spool file E. Basically, this is our rendition of just working with your spool files on the iSeries, but combining it with all the features of Esend. So across the top, you'll see all these different options as far as emailing the spool file, copying it to the IFS, creating PDF from a spool file. And the nice thing about combining this on the screen here is instead of having to prompt the ESEND commands and fill in all the spool file pieces of information, just putting an option in front of one of these will fill all that in for you. And you might have to do nothing but simply put in an email address or almost nothing. So it's a really great way to automate you working with your spool files and being able to do things with them utilizing ESEND. Okay, back to the menu again. Another feature that I want to point out is this distribution rules. So let's say, once again, you have kind of a methodic process where you're producing some type of a report for a customer and sending them the results. Then you run it again for another customer, send them the results. And so this methodic run the report over and over and over again for individual customers. What this allows you to do is to write a single report that combines all the information for all your customers, and then let ESEND search through that spool file, look for customers for a particular number or whatever you specify, and send them the results. So let ESEND do all this bursting for you in one process. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So here I've got a distribution rule called orders, and this is just a couple lines in there. So the first thing is the search text on that first one there. This is actually a customer number. I've told it a particular line and position that's going to be on this report. So all the pages that contain 987654 for the customer number, send to Julie Adams. Then it'll look for the next one. All the pages in the spool file for 100-112, send them to Sam Smith. This is really easy to maintain as your customers come and go. You can simply go into this rule set, add or remove different entries in here. So it's a very nice way to automate bursting reports and sending them out to multiple locations. Okay, and back to the menu, there's just one other feature I want to show you here, and this is the spool forwarding rules. This is a ability in ESEND where you can specify particular output queues that you want ESEND to monitor. And as soon as a spool file enters that output queue, you can tell it to do something with that spool file. So let's look at a simple example here. I have an output queue called Dave G1 that I've told ESEND to monitor. And below that are all the different criteria that you can use to qualify if that spool file is what you want to mess with. I've left this one generically as star all. So basically any spool file that enters this output queue is going to go down to the bottom, look at the send to, it's going to get emailed to this email address. So very, very generic, and it's going to go as a PDF. Let's look at a slightly different one here. I've got another output queue called D Smith. I'm being much more specific here. I only want spool files with the name of ABC to be messed with this rule. And down at the bottom, instead of putting in an email address for the send to, I'm actually using the send to line as a command line. And that's just done by simply starting out with CMD : followed by any command you want to process here. In this case, I'm actually copying the spool file out to the IFS. I'm pulling in all the spool file information as far as the spool name and number and job number by using those system variables. So it's a very nice way to automate this process. And I can do more than just one command. I could issue multiple commands on this line, just separating each one with a semicolon. So it doesn't even necessarily mean that when the spool file hits this output queue that I'm going to do something with the spool file. It can be used as a trigger to kick off a whole series of processes. And one final thing, here's another out queue that's set that is not even used in the send to. It's actually combining what we just looked at a minute ago, the distribution rules, and saying when a spool file hits this output queue, apply that rule set that I called orders and burst it apart. So you're combining two nice features, the spool forwarding and a distribution, into one process. Gives you a lot of power and flexibility to make some of your mechanical, methodical processes all automated into one process. So that's our quick look into ESEND. Thank you very much.